The whistle sliced through the chilly morning air, sharp as a slap. Boots pounded the packed dirt, voices bellowed, "Move! Move!" And the brutal rhythm of SEAL training blotted out any stray thought of comfort or rest. Lieutenant Sarah Hayes squinted into the blinding floodlights, her heart thudding against her ribs like a prisoner desperate to escape. Ahead, the infamous Hell Wall towered over the field, a 30-foot wooden behemoth painted with mocking, peeling letters, "Only the brave cross here." She was the last in her squad's line, trailing after 20 men whose backs seemed impossibly broad and sure. Sweat stung her eyes. The mud clinging to her uniform felt like cement, but worse was the weight of the stairs. Every instructor, every recruit, every cynic who had already decided who would fail. "Hayes, you planning on moving, or do you want us to fetch you a ladder?" The jeer came from Chief Maddox, his arms folded across a chest carved from years of battle and suspicion. His lips twisted in a smirk, and the other instructors clustered around him, amusement sparking in their eyes. Sarah gritted her teeth and forced herself forward. Her squad, battered and muddy, waited at the far side of the wall, faces impassive, not a word of encouragement. Among them, Petty Officer Brody gave a slow, deliberate shake of his head. "A message, you don't belong here." She'd heard the whispers since the first day. "Did you see her arms? She won't last. Should have stayed behind a desk. Can't even keep up with the warm-ups." Now she stared at the hell wall, hands flexing at her sides. Splinters gleamed in the light. Gouges and muddy handprints told stories of those who had climbed, slipped, bled. She drew in a breath that felt too thin. "Don't waste our time, Hayes." Maddox barked. "If you can't hack it, there's the gate. No shame in going home." The worst part was that he didn't sound angry. He sounded bored, like her failure was already settled and he was just waiting for the paperwork. She crouched, gathering herself. Every muscle trembled. The world shrank to the plank above her head. She leaped. Her boots hit the wall. Mud slicked under her palms. For a second she found a hold, arms straining, pushing herself higher. Shouts and laughter echoed below. She could hear them. "Come on, Hayes. You gonna cry or what?" She tried to tune it out. Up, up, just one more lunge. The plank was within reach. Her fingers closed over the edge, then slipped. Panic roared up her spine. Her boots skidded. She dangled for a breathless, humiliating heartbeat. Time slowed. She heard Brody snicker, the size of the instructors, the scuff of boots behind her. She tried again, arms burning, teeth clenched, but the world seemed to tilt, the wall suddenly slicker, taller, impossible. "Jesus, she's stuck," someone hollered. Sarah's grip faltered. She crashed down, landing in a heap at the base of the wall. Pain flared in her knee, sharp and bright, but worse was the flood of shame, hot as blood. A chorus of laughter burst from the sidelines, raw, unrestrained. The instructors didn't even try to hide their grins. "Maybe she needs a boost, Maddox?" "Nah, maybe she's just waiting for someone to write her an apology letter from the wall." The squad, most of them men who had suffered and sweated and bled alongside her, offered nothing. Their silence hurt most of all. She forced herself to stand, wobbling. Her vision blurred. Chief Maddox strode over, boots squelching in the mud. He stood inches from her face, so close she could see the white scars that crisscrossed his jaw. "You think this is some kind of game, Lieutenant?" he said, voice low enough that only she could hear it. "You think they'll slow down for you out there? You freeze out there, you die. And your squad dies with you. Understand?" Sarah swallowed hard. She managed a nod, jaw clenched so tight it hurt. He straightened, turned to the others. "This is what happens when you bring the weak along. They drag everyone down. Out there you get one shot. One." He glanced at her again, that same bored, resigned look in his eyes. "Last chance, Hayes. Up and over. Or ring out." The bell, the symbol of failure, hung on a post beside the field. A simple brass bell. Ring it and you were done. Free from pain and shame, and the suffocating glare of men like Maddox. But Sarah's feet refused to move. She looked at the wall, at the bell, at her squad. At Brody's smirk. At Maddox's indifference. Something inside her twisted. Not anger. Not yet. More like humiliation thickening into resolve. She moved to the wall again, this time slower, breath rasping in her ears. The laughter faded to a low, expectant murmur. Her palms bled where a splinter had bitten deep. She set her jaw and jumped, clinging to the planks. Higher this time, teeth gritted, body screaming. She could hear them just behind her, their jeers, their doubts, their certainty. She made it halfway, legs burning, hands shaking. The top loomed so close she could taste it. And then her grip slipped. The pain in her knee screamed. She lost her footing. She fell again. This time nobody laughed. The silence was worse. Maddox shook his head and turned away. Training resumes, he barked. Leave her. She'll catch up or she won't. Sarah stood alone, mud and sweat mixing with tears she refused to let fall. Every part of her ached, body, pride, hope. The squad filed past, eyes avoiding hers. Brody lingered, flashing a grin that didn't reach his eyes. Don't take it personal, Hayes, he muttered. Some of us just aren't made for this. She watched them go, a lump choking her throat. She looked at the wall, her enemy, her judge, her crucible, and squared her shoulders. Chief Maddox's words rang in her ears. One shot. One. Sarah limped back toward the wall, every step a declaration. Not yet. Not today. I'm not done. If you're enjoying this story, please subscribe to the channel. The days after the hell wall were merciless. Every morning began in darkness, the world reduced to mud, sweat, and the barked orders of men who had already decided her fate. The barracks were cold and close, the air thick with the smell of bleach, fear, and something rawer, resentment. No one spoke to Sarah except when forced. She'd become a ghost, the punchline to jokes that trailed after her like her own shadow. Better stay out of Hayes's way on the ropes, boys. She might freeze up and knock you off. You sure you don't want the bell, Hayes? We could engrave your name on it. Her cot was the last by the door, isolated. She spent her nights staring at the ceiling, counting the minutes until the bugles shriek, feeling the ache settle in her bones and soul. Every meal was the same, silence broken by a snicker as she passed, heads turned away. She'd pick at her food, barely tasting it, her appetite shriveled by shame. Only Corporal Elena Ramirez, a wiry woman with sharp eyes and a jagged smile, ever offered more than a grunt. On the third night, Ramirez slid onto the bench opposite her, ignoring the stares. You're eating like a sparrow. Gonna need more than that if you want to outlast these assholes. Sarah blinked, caught off guard by the simple kindness. She offered a small, grateful smile. Lost my appetite, I guess. Ramirez shrugged. Happens to the best. Happened to me. She jabbed her fork at Sarah's tray. Eat. Then sleep. You'll need it for tomorrow. Sarah wanted to ask why she cared, but the question died on her lips. She ate, and though the food tasted like cardboard, it went down. The next day, Chief Maddox unleashed hell. Burpees until her arms gave out, log carries that bit into her shoulders, sprints through icy surf until her feet went numb. Her failures were announced at every turn. During the combat swim, Sarah's body screamed. The Pacific was black and endless, swallowing her breath, her hope. She forced herself forward, fighting cramps and cold. Brody and his buddies swam past, spraying water in her face. Brody surfaced near her, voice carrying over the slap of the waves. You know, Hayes, if you drown, we'll never hear the end of it. Might as well save us the trouble now. She gritted her teeth, refusing to answer. Instead, she thought of Maddox's voice. You freeze out there, you die. And your squad dies with you. Her pride was a fist in her chest, pounding out a rhythm. Not yet. Not yet. She barely made it to shore. As she collapsed, Maddox's boots appeared beside her face. He leaned down, voice low. I hope you're learning, Lieutenant. This isn't about pride. Out there, nobody gives a damn what you did last week. Only thing that matters is if you get up. Sarah stared up at him, mud caked to her cheek. She nodded, silent. Nights blurred together, her alone in the gym after lights out, knuckles splitting against the pull-up bar, lungs burning as she ran laps around the compound. Her only audience was the empty bleachers and sometimes Ramirez, who would wordlessly join her in the dark, the slap of their shoes a silent pact. The ridicule didn't stop. One morning, Sarah found a drawing taped to her locker. A stick figure clinging to a wall, tears streaming down its face. The word princess scrawled underneath. Laughter erupted as she crumpled it in her fist. She caught Brody's eye, he smirked and looked away. She thought about ringing the bell. Every night, its promise of release grew sweeter. But she remembered the hell wall. The humiliation. The way Maddox hadn't even looked disappointed, just unsurprised. That stung worst of all. Ramirez caught her staring at the bell one dawn, after a run that left her gasping. Thinking about quitting? She asked, leaning against the post. Sarah shook her head even though her heart screamed yes. If I ring out, they win. I can't let them win. Ramirez grinned. That's the spirit. Come on. Let's run it again. One night, after everyone else was asleep, Sarah stayed on the training ground, hands raw, body bruised. The moon cast everything in cold silver. She tried the wall again. And again. Each failure burned away something inside her, fear maybe or pride. Finally, on the 5th try she made it over. Alone, silent, she sat atop the planks and looked out at the dark sea. She didn't cry, didn't cheer. She just breathed, slow and steady, as the world stretched vast and possible before her. The next day, Chief Maddox caught her after drills. "Pace. With me." She followed him to the edge of the compound. There waiting was Senior Chief Monroe, a legend among SEALs, his hair gone silver, eyes sharp as a hawk's. Monroe looked her up and down. "Heard you've been giving the Bell a run for its money." Sarah's cheeks flushed. "I'm just trying to keep up, sir." He grunted, half a smile tugging at his lips. "Don't keep up. Get ahead. Maddox tells me you've got more guts than sense." "Good. But guts alone won't save you. You need skill. And you need to believe it." He tossed her a weighted pack. "You'll train with me after hours. No shortcuts. No pity. You break, you quit. Got it?" Sarah nodded, the weight settling on her shoulders like a dare. "Got it." The next weeks were brutal. Monroe's drills were relentless. Ocean swims, close quarters combat, grueling obstacle runs. He never let her forget the hell wall, pushing her to repeat it until she could clear it blindfolded. Every bruise, every scar became proof. She was still here. Through it all, Maddox watched, his gaze unreadable. The jokes faded, replaced by wary silence. Ramirez started training with Sarah openly, and others, one or two, began to nod in her direction, grudging respect flickering in their eyes. But Brody wasn't done. One evening, as Sarah limped back to the barracks, he cornered her. "You really think Monroe's gonna make you a SEAL? You'll never be one of us." Sarah met his gaze, voice steady. "I'm not here for you. I'm here for the mission." He laughed, but there was something uneasy in his eyes. She walked past him, every step a victory. That night, as Sarah lay in her bunk, the ache in her muscles was matched by something unfamiliar, hope. She wasn't the squad's joke anymore. She was their competition. Tomorrow, she promised herself, "I climb higher. I run faster. I don't stop." And for the first time since the wall, she believed she could. The sun bled through the clouds in a haze of gold, promising another day of trials. It was the final week of training, Hell Week, the gauntlet that broke the toughest candidates, grinding flesh and spirit to dust. Only the best, the most relentless, survived. Sarah's uniform was stiff with dried salt and sweat, her knuckles split and bruised. Around her, the squad stood in exhausted silence, huddled on the gravel as instructors stalked the perimeter like wolves. Chief Maddox paced before them, eyes hard. "Listen up. This is your last shot. You screw this up, you're done. You pass, your SEALs." The final exercise, a hostage rescue. Real boats, live ammo, blinding floodlights. The mission brief was simple. Get the hostages out, neutralize threats, and move as a unit. Failure for one meant failure for all. Maddox's gaze flickered to Sarah, lingering an instant longer than the rest. She felt the weight of every mistake, every humiliation balanced on that one look. She squared her shoulders and met his eyes. They loaded into the blacked-out van, heartbeats thrumming. Ramirez checked her gear, lips pressed tight. Brody muttered something under his breath that Sarah ignored. The mock compound loomed ahead. Razor wire, guard towers, men in masks with paintball guns waiting to take them down. Their squad leader, Petty Officer Leung, barked, "Positions." Sarah's role was critical, breach specialist. She was to lead the charge, set the charges, make the opening for her team. Any hesitation could mean disaster. The countdown began. 3, 2, 1. They burst from cover, boots slamming the ground. Sarah sprinted for the gate, adrenaline drowning the tremor in her limbs. The guards opened fire, paintballs popping against her vest and helmet. She dove, rolling under the wire, setting the first charge. Ramirez covered her, shouting, "Go, Sarah. I've got you." Her hands shook as she set the detonator. Time seemed to dilate. She could hear her own breath, feel every heartbeat. For a split second, she remembered the wall, the laughter, the cold taste of failure. But Ramirez's voice cut through. "Now, Sarah." She pressed the trigger. The charge blew, splinters raining down. Her team surged forward, Brody at her shoulder, Leung barking orders. They stormed the main building, bullets whistling by. Sarah was first through the breach. Inside was chaos. Smoke, shouts, the strobe of gunfire. Brody hesitated at the door, flinching as paintballs splattered near his head. "Move!" Sarah shouted, grabbing his arm and dragging him forward. They found the hostages in a room wired with fake explosives, a maze of red string and blinking lights. Sarah crawled in, sweat blinding her. Every muscle screamed, every breath felt stolen. Brody tried to push past. "Let me." "No." Sarah barked. "Follow my lead or we all fail." She traced the wires, sweat stinging her eyes, memories of late-night drills with Monroe pounding in her skull. "Come. Steady." Every motion practiced, every second precious. One wrong move and the bomb would explode colored dye, signaling failure. Her hands moved with a certainty she hadn't known she possessed. She disarmed the device, freed the hostages, signaled the team. They hustled out, covering each other, paintballs pelting their backs as they fled. They burst into daylight, hostages in tow. Chief Maddox stood waiting, arms folded, jaw set. There was a long silence. The instructors conferred in whispers, marking their clipboards. Brody dropped to his knees, helmet rolling away. He looked at Sarah, breathless. You saved our asses in there." Sarah wiped the sweat from her brow, staring at her trembling hands. "Just did my job," she said, voice low. But her heart thundered with something fierce and wild, victory. Ramirez came up, grinning wide, and threw an arm around Sarah's shoulders. "You killed it, Hayes. About time someone shut Brody up." Brody glared, but something in his eyes had changed. Not friendship maybe, but respect. Chief Maddox approached, eyes narrowed. For a moment, Sarah thought he might find fault, call out a flaw, some overlooked failure. Instead he nodded once, sharply. "Not bad, Lieutenant. Maybe you're finally figuring out how to lead." The word struck deeper than any insult. She straightened, exhausted but unbowed. After the debrief, the squad gathered in the barracks, battered but alive. Brody sat apart, sullen but didn't speak. Ramirez handed Sarah a protein bar, smirking. "Heard you saved his sorry hide in there." Sarah snorted, finally relaxing. "Don't let him forget it." She found herself smiling as the weight of the week settled in, a fatigue deeper than bone but sweeter for the victory. For the first time she was not alone. She belonged. Later, Monroe found her on the dock, watching the sun bleed into the Pacific. He stood beside her, hands in pockets. "Hell of a run today, Lieutenant." Sarah stared at the horizon, heart full. "Thank you, sir. For not giving up on me." Monroe's gaze was gentle, gruff. "You did the work. Remember this feeling, Hayes. You've earned it." A whistle sounded from the compound. Graduation was in sight, SEAL tridents gleaming on the horizon, if they could just survive the final days. Sarah turned from the sea, shoulders straight, eyes clear. She had crossed the wall. She had led her team. She had earned her place. And the laughter, so loud, so sharp, was gone. In its place, the quiet respect she'd always craved. Tomorrow, she thought, let them come. "I'm ready." The call came before dawn. An alarm blared through the barracks, slicing through dreams and exhaustion. Sarah's eyes snapped open, heart instantly hammering. The old tension, the bite of adrenaline. Only this time it wasn't a drill. Chief Maddox's voice thundered down the corridor. "Gear up. Briefing in 5. Sarah leapt from her bunk, boots thudding on the cold floor. All around her, the team moved in silence, faces hard, every gesture honed by months of pain and discipline. Ramirez met her eyes as she buckled her vest. No words, just a nod. In the briefing room, the air was electric with fear and focus. Commander Brewer stood at the head of the table, flanked by senior officers. He wasted no time. "We have an Allied research vessel, the Kestrel, hijacked off the Somali coast. Hostile force, unknown strength. No demands yet. There are hostages on board, including 2 civilians. You go in fast, quiet, and you get them out alive." Sarah's mind raced through possibilities, exits, entry points, threats, the chaos of a live mission. But there was no time for doubt. She listened as the plan unfolded, then met Chief Maddox's eyes. He gave her a single, loaded nod. "You're ready." Minutes later they were in the chopper, rotors screaming overhead. The world was reduced to green night vision and the taste of salt air. Ramirez checked her weapon, jaw set. Brody sat beside Sarah, his fingers drumming a nervous tattoo against his rifle. This time his fear was not for her, it was real. The sea below glimmered black and bottomless. The Kestrel loomed ahead, a gray hulk silhouetted against the faintest rim of sunrise. 2 minutes, the pilot barked. Sarah ran through the plan again in her head. Board at the stern, sweep to the bridge, secure the engine room, extract the hostages. Simple on paper. In reality, a nightmare. They fast-roped onto the deck, boots hitting metal with a clang swallowed by the roar of the waves. Immediately, gunfire spat from the shadows. Someone screamed. Chaos erupted. "Move! Move!" Maddox bellowed, but he barely made it 2 steps before a bullet clipped his leg, spinning him to the deck. Sarah dropped to her knee beside him, blood blooming across his fatigues. "I'm fine," he growled through gritted teeth. "Go. You lead." She froze for a split second, then it clicked. The moment was hers. She grabbed the radio. "Ramirez. Brody. On me. Cover left." Bullets sparked off the metal railings. Sarah hugged the bulkhead, peering into the darkness. She saw the glint of movement, a gunman ducking behind a crate. She signaled Ramirez, who sent a short, controlled burst. The gunman fell. They pressed forward inch by inch, crawling over lifeless bodies, smoke burning their throats. Ramirez lobbed a flashbang into the engine room. The detonation lit up the gloom, scattering their attackers. Sarah's mind became a machine, counting ammo, checking corners, keeping the team together. She didn't have time to think of fear or failure or the wall. Only the mission. Only her people. In the chaos, Brody slipped as a second gunman emerged, rifle raised. Without thinking, Sarah threw herself between them, tackling Brody out of the line of fire. The bullet burned past her shoulder, so close she felt the heat. Brody scrambled up, eyes wide with shock. "You. Don't stop," she shouted, dragging him forward. They reached the bridge. A heavy metal door stood between them and the hostages. Shots rang out from inside. Sarah glanced at Ramirez, then at Brody. "Stack up," she ordered, her voice steady. Ramirez flashed her a grin, wild, fearless. "Let's finish this." Sarah kicked the door. It burst inward, smoke and chaos swallowing them. For a heartbeat, everything was noise, shouts, shots, the crack of breaking glass. A man held a hostage, a woman in a lab coat, gun pressed to her head. His eyes met Sarah's. His hand trembled. "Don't do it," Sarah called, raising her weapon. "Let her go. It's over." For a moment, the standoff hung, brittle as glass. The man hesitated, then jerked the woman forward, using her as a shield. Brody's finger tightened on the trigger, but Sarah shook her head. "Wait." Sarah edged closer, lowering her own rifle. "You don't want to die here. Let her go, and I give you my word, you walk out alive." The man's eyes darted to the windows, to the barrels trained on him. For a moment, Sarah thought he'd shoot. Then slowly his arm dropped. The hostage staggered away, sobbing. Ramirez tackled the gunman, pinning him to the floor. Sarah swept the room, 3 more hostages all alive. She keyed her radio. "Bridge secure. Hostages accounted for. We're coming out." The aftermath was a blur. Handcuffs, medics, the shock and relief in the hostages' eyes as Sarah led them down the battered corridor to the waiting chopper. As she lifted Maddox onto the stretcher, his blood staining her hands, he gripped her wrist. "You led, Lieutenant," he whispered, pride softening his features. "You brought them home." Sarah nodded, throat tight. The ride back was silent, adrenaline draining out of her, leaving only exhaustion, and a deep, steady sense of rightness. She watched the sunrise break over the horizon, painting the world in gold. Back at base, as the medics whisked Maddox away and the survivors hugged their rescuers, Sarah stood apart for a moment, heart pounding with the weight of everything she'd become. She had faced chaos, led her team, saved lives. No one laughed now. Not even Brody, who came up to her, helmet in hand. "Never doubted you," he lied, a half-smile quirking his mouth. Sarah met his gaze, her own steady and clear. "I never doubted myself." And for the first time she knew it was true. The weeks after the mission passed in a blur, debriefings, hospital visits, paperwork that never seemed to end. Sarah was stitched, patched, and prodded by medics, though none of them could see the wounds that mattered most. The old humiliations, the echo of every jeer and doubt. But something was different now. When she looked in the mirror, she no longer saw the woman who froze on the wall, nor the candidate who had been the squad's joke. She saw a leader, forged in fire, standing on the other side of fear. The base swelled with pride and energy as word spread of the successful rescue. The story grew in the telling. How Lieutenant Hayes had taken command, how she'd pulled Brody from the line of fire, how she'd talked the hostage-taker down with nerves of steel. Everywhere Sarah went, she felt the eyes, not mocking now but measuring, judging her worthy. Still, nothing prepared her for the day of the ceremony. The assembly hall was packed, officers in dress whites, rows of enlisted men and women, the brass and hum of pride filling the air. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, gilding the rows of medals and ribbons, glinting off polished shoes. Her team sat together, Ramirez at the edge, grinning like she was in on a secret. Brody sat ramrod straight, his uniform spotless. Sarah waited backstage, the weight of her dress blues unfamiliar but welcome. Her hands shook just a little. She closed her eyes, steadied her breath, and listened to the muffled thrum of applause as the ceremony began. Commander Brewer's voice rang out, formal and clear. For acts of extraordinary courage and leadership under fire, for devotion to duty, and for bringing her team home, Lieutenant Sarah Hayes. Sarah stepped into the light, each stride measured and calm. The crowd rose as one, applause thunderous, echoing to the rafters. She tried to focus to keep her chin up, but her eyes swept the room and caught sight of Chief Maddox in the front row, crutch propped against his chair. His eyes met hers and he nodded, proud, silent, unyielding. Commander Brewer held out the Navy Cross. His words blurred at the edges, but Sarah caught enough. For valor above and beyond the call of duty, a leader who inspired her unit and saved lives at great personal risk, a shining example for us all. The metal was cold against her skin, but she felt its warmth all the way to her bones. The applause swelled. For a moment the hall faded, the lights, the uniforms, even the weight of the metal. All she could hear were the echoes of the wall, the laughter, the voice in her head telling her she'd never be enough. And then it was gone, swept away by pride, relief, and something fierce and shining. After the ceremony the crowd surged around her, congratulations, handshakes, pats on the back. Ramirez found her first, wrapping her in a hug so tight it knocked the air from her lungs. "Told you," Ramirez said, grinning. "Never let him see you sweat." Brody lingered at the edge of the crowd. For a moment he seemed uncertain, then stepped forward, offering his hand. "You earned this, Hayes. For all of us," he said, voice quiet. Sarah took his hand, squeezing it firmly. "I didn't do it alone. We're a team." He nodded, and in his eyes she saw something new, gratitude and the beginnings of friendship. Monroe approached, his silver hair gleaming in the sunlight. "You did good, Lieutenant. You proved every last one of them wrong, including me." Sarah smiled, emotion tightening her throat. "Thank you, sir. For giving me a chance." He leaned in, voice soft so only she could hear. "Remember, leadership isn't about never being afraid. It's about what you do with the fear. You showed them all." As the crowd thinned, Chief Maddox limped over. He regarded her for a long, silent moment. Then he snapped a crisp salute. "Lieutenant Hayes," he said, voice thick, "you made us proud. You made me proud." Sarah returned the salute, eyes stinging. "Thank you, Chief. For everything." He smiled then, just a little. "If you ever freeze again, just remember this day. You earned your place." She watched as he moved off, the respect of a hard man, hard one. Later, as dusk fell and the base quieted, Sarah walked the empty training grounds. She paused at the hell wall, now just a weathered obstacle in the gathering dark. She ran her hand over the rough wood, remembering the pain, the humiliation, the helpless rage. She had been broken here, but she had built herself anew, plank by plank, failure by failure. The bell that had haunted her dreams glinted in the twilight, silent and still. Sarah looked out across the compound, the barracks, the ocean beyond, endless, wild, free. She wasn't the laughingstock anymore. She wasn't the weak link, the outsider, the candidate they'd written off. She was Lieutenant Sarah Hayes, Navy Cross recipient, SEAL, leader, survivor. She took a deep breath, feeling the future open before her, a future earned in sweat and scars, in friendship and fire. She squared her shoulders and walked away from the wall, metal glinting at her chest, head held high. No one would ever laugh at her again.